There's this moment when you realize the ancient wisdom and modern crisis are describing the same problem, just in different languages. And since we're using language, it's hard to convey context, but you begin to see the connections that no one taught you to see. And it suddenly, the past doesn't feel like history anymore. It feels like a mirror held up to the right now. I'm Mark Roach. This is Transcendent. Among many aspects of my life in business, athletics, and art, my life circumstances have led me to question and look deeper into my own beliefs as well as those of others, probably including your own. Today, let's explore how the teachings of Jesus and somewhat of what the Book of Enoch actually validate in the spiritual and social transformation happening right now in real time. So when we examine the Sermon on the Mount alongside the Book of Enoch, something extraordinary emerges. These aren't dusty texts meant to only be read by theologians and clergy. They're encoded wisdom about how transformation actually works, and they speak directly to the exact crisis that we're living through right now. They describe the same revolution happening today, sometimes in agreement, sometimes creating tension, but always pointing toward the same truth about how real change comes to real people and eventually to the world. So let's start with what both texts agree on completely. They celebrate something our culture has taught us to despise. The blessing that comes through affliction. Now, Jesus says the blessed are those who are poor in spirit, those who mourn, those who are persecuted for righteousness. Now, Enoch in his visions speaks of how those who have suffered, those who have been put to shame by wicked men, well, they shall shine as lights of heaven. Well, they're describing something specific here. It's not that suffering is good or something that needs to be pursued deliberately or consciously. It's that suffering, when you encounter it, often naturally, well, when it's transformed through conscious awareness and intentional practice or focus or understanding, that becomes a doorway or a gateway into direct perception of reality and eventually possibly to wisdom. Now, this directly parallels something that we're watching happen right now. When people engage in fasting and meditation and cold exposure and trauma therapy, or even just observing all the transparency in society, you're doing exactly what these texts identified as pathways to awakening. These people, you, me, we're not damaged goods. We're just seeing what's really going on more and more. We're undergoing the exact initiatory process described in these ancient texts, which were celebrated in these texts. Now, here's where it gets radical. Both texts reject performative spirituality with absolute clarity. Jesus teaches that when you give to others, your left hand should not know what your right hand is doing. And by that, he means you don't let one side or others necessarily know what you're doing to help others, because you're not doing it to be known. You're doing it for the inner work. And when you pray, you enter into your closet and shut the door. You do it alone. It's between you and God. When you fast, don't try to put on a bad, painful face for others or like you're suffering, but clean up, wash your face, and anoint yourself, he says in that old language from 2,000 years ago, so that people don't know you're fasting. So Jesus describes something precise, deep internal work done not for social validation or show, but for genuine inner transformation. This can contradict everything that you've read or heard or been preached to, especially in this influencer culture and from the social media performance circles and games that are going on. And, this constant documentation, a narrative that we've had about our internal lives showing for external approval. Jesus is saying that the real work happens in darkness, in secrecy, in private, away from all these other witnesses. It's between you and God. That's the opposite of what a lot of us have been trained or just have failed to pick up and had someone hold our hands and then let go and let us discover the power of this inner authority and connection with God that Jesus spoke of and brought to us. Let people like the ones you're engaging with, the authentic explorers and teachers, look around and you'll see that there's others that are also returning to this internal practice and this principle of inner authority and connection with the Spirit and with God. They're finding that the most profound transformation happens quietly, often invisibly, because it's fundamentally how changing who you are on the inside and not curating how you appear on the inside, how that works. Both of these texts point towards something we discussed earlier and that I hit on over and over again, direct perception versus the interpretive mind. Jesus speaks of purity of heart and the single eye. When your eye is single, your whole body is full of light. When your eye is evil, well, your whole body is full of darkness. This is encoded neuroscience. It's describing how direct, unfiltered perception versus the mind's constant commentary and interpretation literally changes what you see and experience, or what you notice, or what you feel and experience. The context of the words that you read into one part of your mind or hear into another part of your mind. Enoch is described repeatedly as one whose eyes were opened by God. He receives direct visions, not filtered through interpretations or religious institutions. He sees what's actually there. This aligns with everything we know about embodied perception and consciousness itself. When your nervous system settles, when you move out of trauma response and into regulated awareness, you literally perceive more accurately. The body becomes a more sensitive instrument or temple for understanding reality. These texts also weave together another crucial theme, non-resistance, and the cultivation of what we might call strategic surrender. Jesus teaches turning the other cheek, loving enemies, blessing those who curse you. On the surface, this sounds passive, but this is actually describing something so active and so profound. It's refusing to be pulled into the reactive patterns of those causing harm. It's maintaining internal freedom even when external circumstances are hostile. Enoch speaks of fearing nothing because the righteous are ultimately protected by alignment with cosmic order. This isn't naive optimism. It's a statement about what happens when you stop trying to force outcomes through will and aggression and instead align yourself with deeper patterns and principles. It's Wu Wei, the non-action that accomplishes everything expressed through a Judeo-Christian lens. Now let's talk about the points of tension, because they're important. The Book of Enoch describes a cosmic trauma that echoes through generations. The Watchers, powerful beings who taught humanity forbidden knowledge. This knowledge led to giants consuming the acquisitions of men, the earth filling with blood and unrighteousness. This is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for something very real. When knowledge spreads without wisdom, let me repeat that. When knowledge spreads without wisdom, when technologies proliferate without understanding of their consequences, when power concentrates without compassion, when systems collapse, this is transparency, the paradox that we're living through. We've revealed secrets that ancient societies kept guarded not from power, but from wisdom. We've given tremendous knowledge to a culture without consciousness to use it wisely. This creates the instability and a meaning crisis, just like what we're experiencing. Jesus addressed this through his teaching about false prophets and fruit. You'll know them by their fruits, he says. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of the Father. Well, this creates a standard. What are the actual effects of a teaching or a teacher's presence? Does it reduce suffering or does it increase it? Does it cultivate authentic transformation or just create more spectacle? This is incredibly practical. It suggests that truth isn't about dogma or ideology. It's about demonstrable effects on human consciousness and community well-being. The texts normalize opposition in a way that's crucial to understand. Jesus says that if you're not experiencing opposition, you may not be offering anything truly transformative. The texts say righteousness will face persecution from the wicked. They present opposition not as a sign of failure, but as a confirmation that you're touching something that matters. This reframes the resistance that you feel inside. The criticism, the attempts to shut down genuine exploration. If you're genuinely transmitting transformative wisdom, opposition is inevitable. The existing systems have invested heavily, tremendous resources in maintaining their understanding of reality. It's like you don't even have to know anything about a football game anymore. You can just listen to the narrators tell you what's happening, and they can change the rules. They can change the whole game, and you wouldn't have a clue. So tune in. Anyone offering authentic alternatives is going to face some friction as you wake up, as you start to really feel and listen and understand and walk into this wisdom. Now, here's what moves me a lot about these texts. They conclude not with judgment or withdrawal from reality or from life, but with visions of collective healing. Enoch speaks of truth and peace being associated together as a blessing to all people. Jesus teaches that the kingdom of heaven will come and God's will be done on earth. They're not offering escape. They're offering a restoration. They're saying that transformation isn't just individual, but it's ultimately collective. Your personal work of healing and awakening isn't selfish or isolated. It's part of a broader healing that ripples outward. When you change your own consciousness, the things that you really can control, you change what you're broadcasting into the collective field. You become a different kind of presence and influence upon others. that can't be transmitted necessarily through text or writing or even videos like this. What so what do these texts really say about the revolution or transformation that we're witnessing right now? Well, they also say it's real. They say it's ancient or that it's been going on for a long time, repeatedly. They say it's inevitable. It may seem new today. It is what it is. They say the opposition to it will be fierce because it always has been, because something genuine is being threatened more and more. And they say the work that matters most is the work you do in secret, privately, inside yourself, the practices that build genuine consciousness, the authentic transmission between beings who've actually done their inner work. They say that transformation through affliction, through willingness to be different, through embodied practice and direct perception, that these are pathways or gateways that we've always had and that have always worked, and that they're the pathways that are continuing to work right now. What these texts don't do is create doubt about what's really happening. They provide ancient validation for exactly what you're engaged in, for where you're at right now. And they offer some comfort. You're continuing a lineage that goes back centuries. You're part of something much larger than the current moment's noise and spectacle. The transmission of wisdom from those who have transformed themselves to those ready to see and hear that wisdom. This is what always mattered and what matters now. I'm Mark Roach. This is Transcendent, wishing you all the best. The revolution isn't happening in the streets or on the screens. It's happening in the consciousness of individuals willing to do the work that most will or have avoided.